All right, so we're going to be taking a deep dive into something I think everyone listening has probably thought about at least once when they're, booking a flight.
Yeah.
Those little check boxes that say, you know, offset your carbon footprint for just a couple euro.
Right.
It always makes me kind of wonder,
Yeah.
like, is this actually doing anything, or is this just to,
Assuage the guilt.
yeah, assuage my guilt?
Right.
So,
Greenwashing.
yeah. So are these airline carbon offset programs actually legit? Or
Yeah.
are they just a big scam?
That's a great question and a really timely one, too, because, when you look at the scale of global aviation emissions,
Yeah.
it's pretty
Well,
daunting is a good word. I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking,
Millions of tons.
millions of tons of CO2. Yeah. 70.6 million metric tons just in June 2024 alone.
Wow.
That's according to Statista.
Yeah, and that number is just going up, up, up.
Absolutely. As the demand for air travel increases, those emissions are going to keep climbing.
So with all those millions of tons of CO2 going up into the atmosphere,
Right.
how much of a difference can these programs really make?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Yeah.
Well, the International Air Transport Association,
IATA.
they project that airlines are going to invest roughly 571 million euro in carbon offset credits by the end of 2024,
Okay.
which sounds like a lot of money.
It does sound like a lot.
But is it really enough to offset, millions and millions of tons of CO2?
Yeah, when you put it in perspective, it doesn't sound like that much anymore.
That's where context is key.
Right?
And you have to think about it this way.
Yeah.
Airline profits,
Oh, yeah.
they're in the billions.
Yeah, billions with a B.
Right. Billions with a B, and then the cost of actually developing truly sustainable technologies.
Like what kind of technology?
Like, overhauling aircraft designs,
Mm.
developing, truly sustainable aviation fuel.
All right, so things that are actually going to make a difference.
Exactly. Things that are going to fundamentally change the way we fly.
Yeah.
Those costs are astronomically higher.
Yeah.
So this investment in carbon offsets, while not insignificant,
Uh-huh.
it's really just a drop in the bucket compared to what's needed for truly sustainable aviation.
So maybe it's more like a drop in the jet fuel tank.
I like that.
Yeah.
A drop in the jet fuel tank.
But okay, so let's unpack how these programs actually work.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people listening have probably clicked that little checkbox,
Uh-huh.
but might not actually understand what's happening behind the scenes.
Right.
So the basic idea is that, you pay a fee,
Yeah.
and that money is then used to fund projects
Right.
that reduce emissions somewhere else,
Exactly.
like planting trees,
Yeah.
investing in renewable energy.
Uh-huh.
And in theory, this is supposed to balance out
Yeah.
the emissions from your flight.
In theory.
But does it really work that way?
That's where it gets a little tricky.
Yeah.
The whole concept of balancing out, that's kind of where the carbon offsetting conversation gets complicated.
Yeah.
Imagine two passengers are on the same flight.
Okay.
One offsets their emissions, the other one doesn't.
Okay.
Does
Yeah.
that mean the person who offsets
It's flying carbon neutral?
is flying carbon neutral? Exactly.
Yeah, because that's the impression you get,
That's what we want to believe.
Click the box.
Yeah, feel good about your
Feel
flight.
good about your flight.
Right.
It's on my part.
Yeah, it's the marketing magic, but
Yeah.
the reality is a bit more nuanced.
Okay.
Offsetting doesn't magically erase the emissions from the flight itself.
Right.
The plane is still burning the same amount of fuel,
Uh-huh.
releasing that CO2 into the atmosphere.
Right.
The offsetting is happening somewhere else entirely.
Right. So it's not actually
It's not connected.
directly connected to your flight.
Exactly. And then the effectiveness of those offsetting projects.
Yeah.
That's another can of worms. Are they actually making a difference?
Right. Are they actually reducing emissions?
Are they genuinely reducing emissions
Or just shifting them around?
or are they just shifting them around? Exactly.
Can I kind of
It's built.
ordering a double cheeseburger
Yeah.
and then donating to a fitness charity?
I love that analogy.
Yeah. It makes you feel a little less guilty.
Right. Less guilty.
But it doesn't undo the cheeseburger.
Doesn't undo the cheeseburger.
Okay.
And that's what some critics are pointing out with these carbon offsetting programs.
Yeah.
They're saying, it's not actually addressing the root of the problem. It's
Oh.
just kind of this feel-good measure.
Yeah.
And there's actually a report
Oh.
from the Science-Based Targets Initiative.
Okay. Has ever heard of it?
They're called SBTI for short.
Okay.
They issued a report warning about the clear risks of relying too heavily on carbon credits for offsetting.
What do they mean by clear risks?
Well, they suggest that certain types of carbon credits might be ineffective. Not all carbon credits are created equal.
So how do we know,
Yeah.
which ones are good and which ones aren't.
How do we tell the good from the bad?
Yeah.
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest issues is that there's a lack of standardization and transparency in the carbon offset market.
So it's hard to know.
It's really hard to verify the actual impact of some of these projects.
Yeah.
You know, are they truly additional?
What does additional mean?
Additional means that these emissions reductions wouldn't have happened anyway.
Okay.
So it's not just, business as usual.
So you're not just paying for something that was going to happen already.
Exactly. You're paying for something that's actually making a difference.
Right.
And that can be really hard to prove.
Okay.
And, we haven't even talked about the fact that
Yeah.
CO2 is only part of aviation's environmental impact.
Right.
There's other greenhouse gases,
Right.
and then there's those white streaks that you see in the sky after a plane flies over.
Oh, the contrails.
The contrails, exactly.
I've always thought those were kind of cool.
They are cool.
Yeah.
But, they actually contribute to climate change as well.
No way, those little wispy clouds.
Yeah.
They're bad for the environment.
They do. Believe it or not,
Wow.
they trap heat in the atmosphere,
Yep.
and their warming effect is actually greater than that of aviation CO2 emissions alone.
So even if we could perfectly offset
Yeah.
all the CO2 from flying.
If we could magically make all flights carbon neutral, which we can't,
Right.
we still have this whole other set of climate impacts
From the contrails?
from the contrails from other greenhouse gases.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
It is complicated. And I think for the average traveler who just wants to book a flight
Yeah.
and go on vacation,
Right.
this
There's
is
a lot to think about.
way too much to think about.
It is.
So are airlines doing anything to address these other impacts?
Well, one of the solutions that they're promoting a lot these days is sustainable aviation fuel. Oh, yeah, SAF.
SAF, exact. They're saying this is the future of green flying.
So is it.
Well, it sounds very promising,
Uh-huh.
but SAF currently makes up a tiny fraction
Yeah, I've heard that.
of global fuel demand.
Yeah, like less than 1%.
It's minuscule.
Right. So what are the roadblocks?
Well, there's several.
Okay.
First of all, SAF is currently very expensive to produce,
Okay.
and we lack the infrastructure to produce and distribute it on a large scale.
Right.
And then there are also concerns about the environmental impact of certain SAF feedstocks.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that in our quest to create this sustainable fuel,
Yeah.
we're not creating new problems.
Right. So it's not just about making SAF, it's about making it
Sustainably.
sustainably. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so it seems like SAF, while it has potential,
Uh-huh.
it's not a quick fix.
It's not a silver bullet.
Yeah, what about these international agreements?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of things like Corsia,
Right.
the carbon offsetting and reduction scheme for international aviation.
Yeah.
Doesn't that address some of these issues?
Well, Corsia is definitely a step in the right direction. It's an international agreement
Right.
designed to offset emissions from international flights.
Okay, but just international.
But here's the catch.
Okay.
It only covers international flights.
So what about all the domestic flights?
Exactly. So about a third of all aviation emissions.
Wow.
Those from domestic flights.
A third?
They're not even considered
Under Corsia?
under Corsia.
Okay, so even with these big international agreements,
Yeah.
we're still missing a big chunk.
We're missing a big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something that I've always wondered about this is if offsetting is so important
Yeah.
and it's, such a crucial part of making aviation sustainable,
Mm-hmm.
why is it so cheap?
That is a good question.
Like I was looking at some examples earlier, and you can offset a round-trip flight from LA to Sydney
Yeah?
for just like €23
That's crazy.
with
And then a flight from New York to Hong Kong,
Uh-huh.
which is, over 16,000 kilometers round trip.
Yeah, that's a long flight.
You can offset that for just like €2.31
Wow.
with Cathay Pacific.
It does make you wonder
It does.
if those prices accurately reflect the true cost
Yeah.
of mitigating those emissions.
Right. Like, is €2 really enough
Right.
to offset all of the emissions from a flight from New York to Hong Kong?
It seems a little too good to be true.
Yeah.
And, those low prices could actually undermine
How so?
the perceived value of environmental action.
Uh-huh.
If it's so cheap,
Yeah.
maybe it's not that important.
Right. Maybe it's not really doing anything.
Exactly.
It's like, why bother
Yeah.
if it's just a couple euro?
Right.
So it makes me want to really dig deeper
Uh-huh.
and understand where exactly that offset money is going.
Yeah, what are they actually doing with
Yeah.
it?
And what projects are they funding?
And are those projects legitimate?
Yeah. Are they actually making a difference?
Yeah, are they actually additional?
Right.
It's a lot of questions.
It is, and it also raises questions about whether offsetting is actually changing behavior.
Right.
Like, are people flying less
Yeah.
because of these programs?
Are they just offsetting their guilt and then continuing to fly just as much?
Right, because it's so cheap and easy to do.
Exactly. It's a very convenient way to feel good about yourself without actually changing your behavior.
So that's a really crucial question, and I think something for our listeners to really think about.
Absolutely.
But before we get into that,
Okay.
let's talk about what passengers are saying
Okay.
about sustainable air travel.
Yeah.
Because research shows that people are actually willing to make some sacrifices for the environment when it comes to flying.
This is where I find some hope.
Yeah.
You know, there was a report from CETA.
Okay.
They found that 57% of passengers would be willing to accept a 2-hour longer flight
2 hours.
for a 50% reduction in emissions.
That's a long time.
It is a significant commitment of time for an environmental benefit.
Yeah. But I guess if you really care about the planet,
Yeah.
2 hours might be worth it.
It seems like people are really starting to understand the urgency of the climate crisis
Oh, wow.
and are willing to make changes
Yeah.
in their travel habits.
So why aren't more airlines offering those slower,
Right.
more sustainable flight options?
That's a great question.
You know, I feel like I would choose that
Uh-huh.
if it was an option.
Well, maybe it comes down to profits.
Right.
You know, slower flights mean fewer flights per day,
Yeah.
which could potentially impact their bottom line. So it kind of highlights that disconnect between what passengers say they want.
And what the airlines are actually offering.
Exactly.
And it's not just about slower flights.
Right.
That same CETA report
Yeah.
found that only 15% of passengers have actually purchased carbon offsets,
Wow.
even though 50% are aware of the option.
That's a pretty big gap
It is.
between awareness and action.
Yeah, people know about it.
They know about it.
But they're not necessarily choosing it.
Yeah. What's going on there?
Yeah. What are the reasons behind that?
Yeah.
So in the next part of our deep dive,
Okay.
we're going to explore some of those reasons
Right.
and discuss some practical steps that you can take
Okay.
to make your air travel more sustainable.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned. All right.
It's kind of interesting to think about, like, why aren't more people choosing to offset
Yeah.
their flights even when they know about it?
Yeah.
You know, maybe they just don't trust the programs.
Right.
Maybe they feel like they're not transparent enough.
Yeah. Or maybe they just feel like
Uh,
it's not really going to make a difference.
yeah, if I offset my one flight when thousands of other flights are taking off every day,
Right.
does it really matter?
Yeah. Does it really matter?
That's a valid question, but
Yeah.
it's really important to remember that, like, collective action,
Uh-huh.
it starts with individual choices.
Right.
So if enough people demand sustainable options, the airlines are going to have to respond.
Right. They're going to have to do something.
Exactly. It's about, like, creating that shift in consumer behavior.
Right.
And that shift is already starting to happen.
Yeah. I think people are definitely becoming more aware
Absolutely.
of the environmental impact of their travel.
Yeah. And they're starting to consider it when they're making those travel decisions.
Right.
So, you know, while we're waiting for the aviation industry to, like, fully embrace sustainability,
Yeah.
what are some practical steps that our listeners can take
Yeah. What can we actually do?
to reduce their own impact?
Where do we even begin?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to be an informed consumer.
Okay.
You know, don't just blindly accept what airlines are telling you about their sustainability programs.
Right. So when we see that little checkbox that says offset my carbon footprint,
Yeah.
we shouldn't just click it.
Don't just click it without thinking.
Yeah. Without understanding
Yeah.
what it actually means.
Dig a little deeper,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay. So like, what kind of questions should we be asking?
Well, where is that money actually going?
Yeah. Where's the money going?
What specific projects are they funding?
Uh-huh.
Are those projects independently verified?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. Are they truly additional?
Right. We talked about that earlier.
Meaning, you know, these emissions reductions wouldn't have happened anyway.
Right.
We need to be a little bit skeptical
Yeah.
and demand more transparency.
From the airlines.
From the airlines, exactly.
Okay. So we got to be informed.
Yes.
But what about actions that we can take
Yeah.
beyond just like looking at those offset programs?
Right.
Like, what can we actually do to reduce our impact
Yeah.
while we wait for the airlines to like
To get their act together.
get their act together on sustainability?
Yeah. Well, one of the simplest things is to just reduce our overall flying frequency,
Okay.
you know? Do we really need to take that short haul flight?
Yeah.
Or could we choose a more sustainable option like train travel?
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of
Uh-huh.
Taking flights when I could have taken a train.
Yeah, convenience often comes at a cost.
That's true.
And in this case, it's our planet's health.
Yeah.
So, we need to weigh our priorities
Uh-huh.
and make more conscious decisions.
So think before we book.
Exactly. Think before you book.
Okay.
And consider, is flying truly necessary?
Yeah.
Or are there other options?
That would be less harmful to the environment.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to start thinking about those alternatives
Yes.
when we're planning trips.
Absolutely.
And then if we do have to fly,
Yeah.
are there ways to choose airlines that are making a genuine effort to be more sustainable?
Absolutely. Look for airlines that are using more fuel-efficient aircraft,
Okay.
that are exploring alternative fuels like SAF,
Right.
and that are actively working to reduce their non-CO2 impacts like contrails.
Okay, so support the airlines that are actually walking the walk.
Yeah, not just talking the talk.
Not just greenwashing.
Yep.
So it's not just about offsetting.
Right.
It's about actively choosing
Yeah.
airlines that are invested in making aviation more sustainable.
Exactly.
Are there other things that we should consider
Yeah.
when we're booking flights? Maybe even the type of ticket that we purchase.
Oh, that's a great point. Believe it or not, the type of ticket you buy can actually impact your carbon footprint.
Really? How so?
Yeah, business class and first class seats have a much larger carbon footprint
Than economy?
than economy, exactly.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it all comes down to space.
Okay.
Those premium seats take up more room, which means fewer passengers per flight,
Right.
which means higher emissions per passenger.
So even on the same flight,
Yeah.
our choices can impact our
Yeah.
environmental impact.
Exactly.
Wow.
And this kind of brings us back to that idea of
Individual responsibility.
individual responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, even small changes in our travel habits.
Can have a cumulative impact.
Like a ripple effect.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It really highlights that, we're not powerless in this situation.
Yeah.
We have agency, and we can choose to be part of the solution.
I like that be part of the solution.
Yeah.
So to recap,
Okay.
we need to be informed consumers.
Yeah.
We need to reduce our flying frequency when possible.
Right.
Choose airlines that are taking concrete action
Yes.
to reduce their impact.
Uh-huh.
And be mindful of our ticket choice
Yes.
when we do fly.
It's a lot to think about,
It is.
but even small changes can make a difference.
Okay, so that's a good starting point.
Those are great starting points.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing journey for all of us.
Yeah.
We're all learning and evolving as we navigate this complex issue.
Yeah, for sure.
The most important thing is to keep the conversation going.
Right.
Talk to your friends and family about the environmental impact of flying.
Yeah.
Share what you've learned from this deep dive.
Spread the word. Exactly. The more awareness we raise, the more pressure we can put on the aviation industry.
Right, to do better.
To make real and lasting changes.
So it's about raising awareness,
Yeah.
demanding better options,
Uh-huh.
and making responsible choices.
As individuals, but also collectively.
Collectively.
Yeah.
But what about bigger,
Right.
more radical solutions?
Yeah.
Are there things beyond individual actions
Uh-huh.
that could really transform the aviation industry
Absolutely.
and make it truly sustainable?
Well, individual actions are essential.
Yeah.
There are also more systemic
Okay.
and technological advancements that could really revolutionize air travel as we know it.
So in the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
we're going to explore some of those
All right.
more radical solutions
Sounds good.
and discuss what a truly sustainable future for aviation might look like.
Okay.
So don't go away.
No.
Okay. So we've talked about what airlines are doing and what we can do as individuals.
Right.
But is it enough?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Are we just kind of putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound here?
Well, some people argue that these incremental changes,
Like better fuel efficiency.
yeah, more SAF.
Yeah.
They say that that's enough to get us on the right path.
Uh-huh.
But others believe that we need more radical solutions.
Yeah, we need to completely rethink how we approach air travel.
Exactly.
So let's dive into some of those more radical ideas. What are people talking about?
Well, one idea that's gaining a lot of traction, particularly for shorter distances, is this concept of slow travel.
Oh, yeah, we touched on that earlier
Yeah.
with the train travel.
Exactly. Imagine high-speed rail networks
Right.
connecting major cities.
Yeah.
Making train travel a much faster and more appealing alternative to flying.
I would love that.
Right.
Train travel is so much more relaxing.
You can enjoy the scenery, you can read, you can get some work done.
Yeah, you don't have to deal with all the airport hassle.
Exactly. Plus, the environmental benefits are significant.
Mm-hmm.
Trains are way more energy efficient than planes, especially on their shorter routes.
Right.
And they can run on renewable energy,
Yeah.
which further reduces their carbon footprint.
Okay, but what about long-haul flights?
Yeah,
You can't exactly take a train from London to Tokyo.
that's true. But even for those longer distances, there are some really fascinating ideas emerging.
Oh, like what?
Well, one is the development of electric aircraft.
Whoa, electric planes.
Yeah.
Is that even possible?
Well, it's definitely a huge technological challenge.
Yeah, I feel like batteries are so heavy.
They are. It's one of the biggest hurdles.
Yeah.
But some companies are actually making some pretty good progress.
Really?
Yeah, right now the focus is on shorter routes like, regional hops.
Uh-huh.
But as battery technology gets better,
Yeah.
we could see larger electric planes
Wow.
capable of flying longer distances.
That would be amazing.
It would be a game changer.
Quiet emission-free flying.
Sign me up. And it's not just electric planes.
Oh, there's more.
Yeah, research is also being done on hydrogen-powered aircraft,
Wow.
which could potentially offer even greater range and sustainability.
So it sounds like there's a lot of really exciting innovation happening,
There is.
but will it be implemented quickly enough?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
These technologies are still in their early stages.
Right.
It's going to take time
Right.
and significant investment to bring them to market at scale.
Right. And I imagine there are a lot of regulatory hurdles as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not just a technological challenge.
All right.
It's also political.
It's political. It's economic.
Yeah.
Governments need to incentivize the development of these sustainable aviation technologies,
Mm-hmm.
and airlines need to be willing to make bold investments.
Even if it means losing money in the short term.
Yeah, even if it hurts their bottom line in the short term.
And that's where we as consumers come in.
Right.
We need to keep demanding change.
Yes.
And support the airlines that are actually investing in these solutions.
Absolutely.
And hold the others accountable.
Hold their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
It's about more than just feeling less guilty about our own travel.
Uh-huh.
It's about using our collective power
Yeah.
to push for systemic change.
I like that.
Yeah.
So it brings us back to that question we asked at the beginning.
It's a big question.
Are airline carbon offsets a scam?
I think we've learned that the answer is
It's complicated.
it's more nuanced than a simple yes or no.
Yeah.
There are legitimate offset programs out there
Mm-hmm.
that are funding genuine emission reduction projects.
Right.
But there are also programs that are less transparent, less effective,
Yeah.
and perhaps even misleading.
Right.
And even the best offset programs,
Yeah.
they're really just a temporary fix.
Yeah. A Band-Aid?
Exactly. They don't address the root cause,
Which is
our dependence on fossil fuels for air travel.
Right.
So, offsets can be part of the transition to a more sustainable future,
Yeah.
but they can't be the end game.
Right. We need to embrace those radical solutions that we were
Yeah.
just talking about.
We need to rethink how we travel,
Yeah.
where we travel, how often we travel.
And we need to hold our leaders accountable
Absolutely.
for creating policies that support
Yeah.
truly sustainable aviation.
That's a big task.
It is, but it's also exciting.
Yes.
We have the chance to completely reinvent air travel.
Yeah, make it not only more sustainable, but maybe even more enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm into that.
I think we all are.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Uh-huh.
I'm feeling a sense of hope,
Yeah.
but also a sense of urgency.
Definitely.
Hope because there are solutions out there.
Right.
And urgency because we need to act now.
We do.
The future of aviation
And the future of our planet.
is in our hands.
Let's make sure we choose wisely.
Couldn't have said it better myself.